Hello, my name is Andy McNeil, and I'm joined by Dr. Bridget Heron, the Dean of the Office of Institutional Effectiveness, and we're going to go through how to request a faculty position for the Faculty Hiring Priorities Committee. So today we're just going to quickly go over the committee purpose that actually rates all of the requests from across campus, the committee membership, the rubric used to rate the requests, the process overview, points to consider when you're writing your own, completing the requests and samples of that. And then if there's any question and answer afterwards, we'll do that, which there won't be this time. Okay, so the purpose of the committee, as you can see, is to review and develop hiring priority recommendations for faculty positions that are submitted through the college-wide program review process. The charge of the committee is to develop an annual list of faculty hiring priority recommendations and to review and update as necessary the faculty hiring priority criteria and evaluation rubric. And if you've done FHP requests before, you'll see that we've made changes this year, and so that's what that refers to.
And Andy, even though we are in a hiring freeze, this process is important, yes?
Yes, when I was a faculty member myself at a chair, I always wrote positions because you never know when money's going to come back to be able to hire new positions or when the state's going to put it in there, and you always want to be ready. And you're always going to have a need. I mean, if you have a need, it doesn't matter whether it's in a time where there is a hiring freeze or not. You want to be ready so that when that is lifted, you're in the running, okay? So the membership of the committee is, there's faculty representation, there's 5 faculty, and there's 5 deans. And then there's also the co-chairs that are non-voting members, and that would be the academic senate president and the vice president of instruction. Okay, so the present committee, the faculty that are represented on the committee are from student development, humanities, learning resources and academic support, health sciences, and arts and languages. And the deans that are on the committee are exercise science, business and technology, math and physical sciences, social and behavioral science, and student success and equity. So the process overview. So obviously this happens through program review, and you find a need. So you identify a need for tenure track faculty. Then you fill out a faculty position request form, and then the request is reviewed and scored based on the established scoring rubric, which we'll show you in a minute. A prioritized list of faculty requests is developed from all of the requests that were submitted. Then a prioritized list is sent forward to the PI committee for review. PI approves and forwards the prioritized list to the President's Cabinet, and the President's Cabinet reviews and approves and sends the recommendation to the President. So here's where the real decision is made. The President assesses the needs and approves the list with or without adjustment. So if it comes straight from the FHP committee and she deems that the need across campus is exactly the way that they were ranked, then that's done. That doesn't always happen because there's different considerations. There's considerations for positions that will be funded from different sources. And if there isn't any funding in that source, then that position will be skipped and the president will adjust. Also, there are programs that have different accreditation standards, and they're required to have positions in order to run their program. So that might supersede the list. And that's something that the president knows, and so the final decision lies with the president.
And all of the dates associated with each of those steps in the process can be found in the program review timeline on our program review website.
So points to consider when you're filling out one of these requests is if you have more than one position, separate each position request for each position. Clearly detail differences in priority of each position. You might have, if they're all the same position like generalists, then you won't really have to detail the differences. They're all ranked the same, but if you're only going to get one, you're only going to get 1, 2, 2, etc. But if you have slightly different positions, like say in math you need physics versus something else in math, then you might want to prioritize the one that is most important to your department. So clearly detail the differences and the priority of those positions. Need for new faculty positions must be identified and justified within your program review. You can't just write your program review and not mention that, oh, you know, here's justification as to why we need this position. Final decisions, again, rest with the president.
Andy, real quick, when you said the new faculty positions must be justified in program review, you're referring not to just the form, but also all of the analytical questions and other areas within program review that narrative and resource needs are identified.
Correct. And, you know, as we say, the next point here is the final decision rests with the president. The president reads all the program reviews and the request forms. So the committee may only see the request forms, and they do their rating based on that. But this is why the president has the final decision. She has the bigger picture, and she reads the program review. And if you've justified it in there, then that might help with, you know, the final decisions in deciding who's going to get hired. Thank you for that. Effective requests require the use of qualitative and quantitative data. And what's great about this year is we provided a lot of that that's automatically populated for you. Outcomes assessment data should be considered when drafting your request as well. So let's look at the request form. And there's only 4 items to answer, but there's some other information that we ask for. 4 items are going to be rated using the rubric. So here's the request form. So once this is not the page that you'll see, but you'll see a page that has, let me see if I can pull it up over here. I can't, okay.
Go back to the form.
Yeah.
And then in the address bar,
Uh-huh.
delete the dashboard.
Yeah, so this is the page that'll open up from your program review when you click on the resource request forms. If you haven't registered, you'll have to do that here. If you've been in here before and done that, then you can come over here and put in your information. And I will do that for mine. And then this will come up. So you see it has all of the requests, different types of request forms, okay? Here you'll enter your request for FHP by clicking on there. And the request form opens, okay? So you can see since this is from my program review, it has my name up there and learning resources where I'm the lead writer for. Here are the programs which program review this request will be coming from, you'll choose. So I'm going to go down here and choose Dean of Learning Resources and Academic Support. Then the faculty position title, okay? So let's say I'm going to put in for education generalist. Is that okay there, Bridget? Mm-hmm. Okay, and then this position is not going to be shared with another department, so I won't do that. But let's say you have a position, you only need, you're in a school that has multiple departments and people are qualified to teach in more than one of those departments, or you're sharing it with someone across campus, then you could put that here so that the committee knows that this is a shared position and that may come into play when they're rating.
If you click on that, it'll prompt. Yeah.
Okay, good. So it'll show, you know, you'll put in the department you're sharing it with or the service area, and then how much time is assigned for each. Then you come down to the funding source. Okay, I'm going to unclick that because I don't want to share the funding source. You may not know this, but this gives us extra information. And again, this is how the president may be the final decision. If it's a restricted fund and there is no funding, then they might not do it. But if it is a restricted fund and it's down at the bottom of the list and it's a needed position, it may get the it may get funded. And then general fund, and if you don't know, just put unknown. History of faculty hiring. So when you're filling out this form, your department might already be in the process of hiring a position, and the committee won't know that, and it won't be included in the data here necessarily. Okay, so if you have had, or you're in the process of hiring somebody since fall 2018 or 2019, then you're going to want to put the number of positions there. Okay, if you don't, we're going to find out anyway, but it's a required answer here. Okay, I'm going to put no because we haven't. Select the name of the program, the service area. Okay, I'm going to go down because I don't think there's anything other than education for me to choose, so I'm going to choose education. Okay, so you notice when you do that, you're going to get automatic values put into these areas down here. So let me just show you. Let me put like fine arts there, right? Boom, they change. Okay, so I'm going to do education. All right, and then the view full dashboard. What's that, Bridget?
The full dashboard, you can go, if you click on it, hopefully it'll take you to a new window, yeah. So this there is, as Andy mentioned, data that is already auto-populated that is sort of like the key pieces of data that will help feed your responses, but also we're aware that there are nuances within each department where those specific data points may not provide the whole picture. So you have access to this dashboard, which allows you to look at more data, so different data metrics, and it also allows you to look at data across time and trends that are not available in those auto-populated fields. Okay. So it's a pretty simple dashboard. This view here is pretty much the only view. If you scroll up a little bit, really the only thing it's gonna drill down to is you select your program. And then once you select your program, you'll get some changes. Yeah, go ahead and do that. And you'll see your FTF sections, non-classroom FTF. So some additional metrics that are not provided in the form. And then also, if you go back to the top again, if you click on that analysis guide, it gives you a little bit more information on how you can make sense of some of the data that's provided to you. And these 3 points, these FTEF standardization metrics, are the 3 that are loaded into the form. So this sort of helps in thinking about how you might make meaning of numbers and make sense of what you're looking at.
Okay, thank you. So back to this, and here's those 3 points. Well, actually, the analysis down here, right?
Right. So it's the same analysis guide. It's for this particular section, the efficiency standards. It's replicated in both the dashboard and here, so you can see the same information in both spaces. But in consultation with FHP committee last year, we determined that the metrics that were being used weren't really providing the robust level of information that was needed to make good decisions around prioritization. And so we developed these 3 metrics that provide an opportunity to standardize the FTEF utilization within a department. So previously, all departments got was how much FTEF they had on the schedule, and then what proportion of that FTEF was adjunct or contract. And that's really the basis for most of the decision making. But FTEF is very much influenced by the number of sections that a department offers, and the number of sections that a department offers fluctuates, and some departments need to offer more sections, but they don't have the faculty to do so. Or some departments are offering an excess number of sections that are declining in enrollment. So this was our attempt to sort of create an even playing field. So there's 3 different ways to look at the FTEF. And one is how much FTEF would you need if you were at an 85% fill rate? how much FTEF would you need if you were at a 15.5 productivity? And then how much FTEF would you need if you were at a 17.5? And then each of those three numbers are compared to your actual FTEF.
So I have a question. Is that additional FTEF you would need?
In some cases it's additional, in some cases it's less. So if you are a department that has a average fill rate of, let's say, 70%, then the number in method 1 will be a negative number because you have more FTEF on your schedule than what you would need if you were at 85%, right? If you're at a 95% fill rate, your number will indicate that you need more FTEF than what is currently offered on your schedule. So the same with method 2 and method 3.
So more FTEF means you consider you need a new full-time.
Right. So if you have more FTEF than on your schedule currently than what those three metrics are suggesting, then it's possible you have enough faculty in your department already, and you may not need more.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask you a couple questions as we go through this. So up here, this shows that there's no adjunct teaching in education, or there hasn't been, and that 0.60% of all classes contract, and then total FTF in the classroom is 0.85.
So there
is that difference because it's overloaded somebody, or?
Right.
Okay.
Or pro rata. So it could be either.
Okay. I know that in this case it's overload.
Overload.
And then, so negative 1.5% means that from last year to this year, we have fewer classes or fewer people teaching?
You must have fewer classes. I'm guessing you have fewer classes.
Okay.
So you dropped your FTEF.
All right. And then when we come down here, the 0.07, that's probably a good range to show that we're about right with
Correct.
the number of.
The closer, if method 1, 2, and 3, the closer they are to 0, which that would indicate that you have the FTEF that's appropriate for that method. So you're probably pretty close. Your fill rates are probably pretty close to 85%, I would guess. And your FTES per FTEF is probably slightly under 15.5.
Okay.
And then again, so if you scroll down in the analysis guide, so it gives you an example. So if your program indicates a plus 3.5 in method 1, it means that you likely have multiple sections that are below 85% filled, and therefore you have more sections and more FTF than what you would need if you had fewer sections that had higher fill rates. Does that make sense, right? So again, the positive numbers indicating you have more than what's needed. I believe that. I think I might have said it the wrong way the first time. And the negative numbers meaning you have slightly less than what's needed.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be in this area.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
All of the because this department is so small, you're not going to get very big numbers in method 1, 2, and 3, right? But when you look at really large departments that have 30 or 40 FTEF on their schedule in one semester, those numbers are going to be much larger.
Let's look at something like English.
There you go. So they have 40 FTEF. So on method 1, so the reason why we did both methods is because, and English is a really good example of this, English classes typically are very full, but contractually they are capped at a lower level, right, which means that inherently they cannot be as productive as other departments, even though they are often at a very close to 100% fill rate, right? So if you look at method 1, it shows, because that's a negative number, this department is obviously at a high fill rate. But method 2 and method 3 are very high positive numbers because this department
fills their class.
They can't be productive because they're capped at 25 or 24.
Okay, so which of these metrics would you use in the narrative?
So if I was an English faculty, I would use, because of the contractual caps, I would use method 1, because method 2 and method 3 don't apply to me because I can never reach those efficiencies with our contractual cap.
Okay, so if you need more information or understanding of this, please attend one of the sessions on data. Okay, and then there's one more area, the department data. So English has 200 valid section count, and that's for the year, last year, correct?
This is the spring. Can you go back to the dashboard?
Oh, the dashboard. I closed it. Yeah.
Let's click on English. That's actually just semester.
It's just spring.
Yeah, there it is. Spring 19, 200 sections. So the data that's in the department data, if we go back to the request form again.
Can I close this?
Yeah. So in this department data, you're looking at spring 19 and the section count, the fill rate, the average class size, and then the percent change in FTS. So another analysis point, if I was writing, would be to look at the percent change in FTEF and as it relates to the percent change in FTES. So if your FTES is declining, that indicates you're serving fewer students. So your FTEF would potentially be declining in a similar way. Okay. If you were responding to the enrollment trends that you're seeing, right? Similarly, if you're seeing growth in FTS, you're seeing an increase, then it would be a good opportunity. It would be a good opportunity to think about how that growth in FTES might support your request for additional faculty. Okay. If you're not seeing the same growth in FTS.
Okay, and just so for those who don't remember, FTF is full-time equivalent faculty and FTS is full-time equivalent students. Okay, so that's the data you're going to want to use when you get down to the questions. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4 questions. So the first question is really using a lot of that data to discuss the data trends, including changes in FTF and the FTS and the impact, if any, on your department or area, okay? If there isn't any data provided above for your area, include the data that supports your request. So you might have data that's specific to your area that you can use for this, okay? That's question number 1. Number 2 is description and the rationale of the position. Number 3 is how will the addition of the new tenure track faculty enhance your program service area. And then number 4 is any information that's not included in questions number 1 through 3, like are there safety issues that you require new faculty? Is there accreditation issues, different things like that? Is there data that's specific to your area that hasn't been used up here? Just anything else that will support your request. And these areas are also the same as on the rubric. So you're going to, for the first part of the rubric, it's going to rate this. The second one's going to rate this, and the third one is going to rate this and these two together. So there's 3 areas that will be rated. We'll look at the rubric in just a moment. This bottom part is it's automatically populated, and it's something that's used by when this form is submitted, it's used by the Office of what's the name of your place again? Institutional Effectiveness.
I think it's also important to note that the data that we have access to is, as you can see, very much focused on classroom instructional faculty. So for those departments that are requesting faculty who perhaps are not going to be teaching in the classroom at all, or are only going to be spending a portion of their load in the classroom, consider what other resources you would utilize to rationalize your request, what other data sources might be out there in terms of, if I was in counseling, I'd be thinking about how many students, I might use SARS data to think about how many students our department serves, or how many students are on campus, or, there might be policy or legislative mandates that have come down over the past years that might warrant a rationalization for additional staffing. So all of those places can be, don't feel confined to just use the data that's being provided to you.
Good, thanks. So next we have, let me get back to this. Okay, is the rubric. And you can see it's pretty simple. And as I said, the first area is going to be covered in this part, second one there, and the last two areas that were on the form are going to be covered here. And this is what your committee uses to rate your request. We already looked at this, so we're not going to discuss that again. But let's look at some examples. And we're joined by our Vice President of Instruction, Isabel O'Connor, so I'd like her to weigh in here as well. So we have some examples here. Some of these may be really good answers to the questions, and some of them may not be as effective. So what I usually do if I'm in a face-to-face session is I have you read these and then analyze it yourself using that rubric. But let's look at this one real quick. Okay, as you can see, there's not a lot of data that's used here. There's a lot of good information. It's very anecdotal, and also it's qualitative, but it doesn't really have some of that information from the data you were provided. So it might not get as high of a score.
Okay, and let's go back to the bottom of that previous paragraph, right? So there's a good point there that says this person will establish a new apprenticeship program. So a good hint is if that apprenticeship program is something that you highlighted during your program review, and you already showed that there's some data that shows there's a need for this program, and so back it up with some to document the need, rather than just saying it will start a new program.
Yeah, something else up in here too is we talked about using outcomes, and here, whoops, let me go back again. If you up in here, you can see that they're referencing the program goal number 1, and so they're using things that are part of their program that they're aspiring to happen in their program as justification in this response. Okay, here's another example, and what do you see as the difference in this one?
So I see a lot more stronger use of data, right? And that data is nicely correlated with the arguments that are being made. So when you look at your ratio between adjunct and full-time, then you connect the new position to how that position would affect the current ratio. And I'm going to read the last paragraph. And it also documents the difficulties in terms of hiring and retaining adjunct instructors. Okay.
Now here's one that is for counseling. So not all positions obviously are going to be classroom instructional positions. Here's one that uses different data. As Bridget was saying earlier, it talks about the number of students that comes in, I believe. Yeah, so the total number of students served by the counseling office increased by 8,980, and it talks about the demand and things like that.
And at the time maybe when this was written, SSP was a new.
This needs to be updated.
Yes, that's all. But it connects with, here's a new mandate, here's something we need to do. We don't have the current capacity to be able to meet the demand.
Yeah, so those are all good justifications for needing new
And one good thing to do here, if you look at the last paragraph, talking about embedded counselors, right, within areas because of basic skills, and there was the VSOC grant and so forth. So it's always nice to connect it, not just connect the data to your own program, but every program serves a bigger role on campus. So if you're a counselor, obviously you're supporting some instructional programs specifically, perhaps, or you're asking for a general counseling position. But you can do that for instructional programs as well. Your CTE, and you work with a transfer program, or you're coordinating something new with the English department or math. And it's always good to show that cross-pollination.
Good. Go on to number 3. How will the addition of new tenure-track faculty enhance your program and service area? So here's where you could talk about the trends and what is missing by not having a tenured or tenure-track faculty to help in your program.
So, and look at the middle paragraph. It'd be nice to, okay, so the opportunity to serve even more students with a career path through the apprenticeship programs, and it's imperative that we have more full-time faculty. So you can add, for example, how many students do you expect to serve through that apprenticeship program?
Right.
Is there really a demand? Has it been documented? So it's connecting the dots to sort of show that things are nicely interwoven.
Yes, and this is a great example of a place where you can use data that may not have been provided by the Office of Institutional Effectiveness, but something that's in the the business community or in the workforce that you can use to justify and support your request. So then here is an example of that 4th area with other considerations and data that support. In this case, they talked about some of the data, and then they have a link to where you can find information, the environmental scan for the industry. Okay, so this is the portion where we usually allow people to ask questions, and we thank you for listening to the presentation. If you do have any questions, feel free to contact the FHP committee or the Office of Institutional Effectiveness, and they will hook you up with somebody that can give you more information about this.
Right, and just to recap, the current co-chairs are Manuel Velez, the Academic Senate President, and yours truly, Isabel.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you guys for joining, and this has been a